Pentagon officials have now confirmed that the U.S. is sending Ukraine cluster munitions as part of an $800 million aid package.
In the past, the U.S. has been hesitant to send these highly lethal bombs that are banned in more than 100 countries. Here's Faith Abube.
A new round of U.S. military aid soon heading to Ukraine, including a batch of artillery shells that contain controversial cluster munitions. Russia and Ukraine have been using the highly lethal weapons on the battlefield. But for months, the Biden administration was reluctant to send any from the U.S. stock to Ukrainian forces and even condemned Russia for using them.
They're using them specifically to strike after civilian targets. There is a big difference between the type of cluster munition being used by Russia and the type that we would provide to Ukraine.
Cluster munitions were meant to break apart midair and scatter bomblets over a large area. They can cause civilian injuries or even death years after a war if they fail to deploy. Human rights groups have pushed back and more than 100 countries have banned them. But the U.S., Ukraine, and Russia have not signed on.
Ukraine has provided written assurances that it is going to use these in a very careful way that is aimed at minimizing any risk to civilians.
The U.S. announcement comes amid Ukraine's slow-moving counteroffensive as it tries to beat back Russian invaders. President Zelensky telling ABC's Martha Raddatz that his troops are still advancing. The Pentagon believes the cluster munitions could prove critical. Officials say they're managing the risk to civilians by only sending cluster munitions that recent tests show have lower rates of leaving unexploded rounds.
I'm as concerned about the humanitarian circumstance as anybody. But the worst thing for civilians in Ukraine is for Russia to win the war.
And the White House says the decision to send cluster munitions to Ukraine was difficult, but the president took his time to consider the potential harm to civilians and only authorized them after a unanimous recommendation from his national security team. In Washington, Faith Abube, ABC News.